Mr. Arndt Pollmann is a German philosopher and a professor at the Free University of Berlin. Professor Pollmann's main topics of research include global and applied justice, equality, human rights, philosophical foundations of democracy and liberalism, moral philosophy. He's an author of numerous articles and books, among which are Introduction to Human Rights, which is a collaboration with Christoph Menke, and Human Rights, an Interdisciplinary Handbook, which is a collaboration with Georg Lohmann. Mr. Arndt Pollmann visits Georgia to participate in Presidential Collegium of State Arrangement. We remind our listeners that Presidential Collegium of State Arrangement is a project implemented by Georgian Institute of Public Affairs, GIPA, and funded by the Reserve Fund of the President of Georgia. The project aims to organize multi-participatory public and academic discussions on topics such as legal state and democracy, religious pluralism and the role of religion in state formation, importance of public space in construction of a constitutional state. During his visit in Georgia, Tbilisi, Professor gave public lecture in Presidential Palace on human rights and religion, and in GIPA on the same issue. And today he has kindly agreed to be a guest on our show. Professor Pollmann, welcome, and thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you as a guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Professor, in your articles and public lectures, you speak about a certain religious foundations, religious roots of the idea of human rights. Could you further elaborate what this means? What are these concrete philosophical, religious roots of the idea of human rights or of human rights thinking? And what importance does this have in the current situation?
I mean, first to say the relationship between human rights on the one hand and religion on the other is quite complex and complicated. The first thing to say would be that the state himself has a complicated relationship to religion, because on the one hand, the state has to be somehow independent from religious thoughts, has to be grounded in belief systems, if you want, or law, which is quite independent from certain religious beliefs. So the state is somehow skeptical, or I would say agnostic, with respect to all kinds of religions he has to cope with. But on the other hand, the state has also the task and the obligation to mediate between conflicting religious belief systems and thoughts. And this is the point where the idea of human rights and the special human right of the freedom of religious beliefs comes in. And if you then take a closer look at the history of human rights, you could say, yes, human rights thinking, modern human rights thinking, has some religious or especially Christian roots, or like deep beliefs who come from Christianity. On the one hand, there is this idea that all human beings should be treated universally equal, just because they are human beings. This is somehow a Christian belief. You might find it in other religions too, but it's certainly a Christian belief too. And on the other hand is that all people share all human beings, just by human beings, share a certain excellence, because we were created in the image of God, as Christians believe, which gives us our dignity as human beings. It's a very central idea for human rights. But this is only half of the story, I would say. There are two other ideas in which I would say are quite modern and non-Christian. And one of these ideas is that, which is a constitutional aspect of human rights thinking too, is that we as subjects or individuals have rights against the rights system as such. The rights system gives us rights against itself. This is a quite modern and new idea. You only find it in the contractualist tradition of political philosophy from the 17th, 18th century on. And the fourth and last idea is that human rights do not only have a national, but also an international dimension, that the world as a whole has to take care of it, is quite a very new and not really a religious idea.
Professor, to go back to the religious roots of and religious foundations of human rights thinking, one can easily know the political importance of this issue. Nowadays, many different groups, from Muslim fundamentalists to extreme religious right in Western Europe or Russia, challenge the idea and ideal of human rights based on religion, oppose it as something contrary to Christian, Muslim, and so on values. Do you think that what you have just described, namely human rights having religious roots and ideals similar to human rights being an organic part of many world religions, can have a polemical or even a political power against such fundamentalism?
I mean, in human rights thinking, you have the problem that people should believe in the idea of human rights, but somehow it is uninteresting why they believe in it. Yeah? We all agree on human rights, but why we agree on human rights may differ from may give a different explanation from me to you, from us to others, and so on. So some might believe in human rights because they think it's an expression of our religious or even Christian belief system. Others might believe in human rights because they are Kantian. Yeah? They are friends of Immanuel Kant. Others might believe in human rights thinking because they are naturalist and they think there are certain human rights written in our nature as human beings and so on. So it doesn't. The idea of human rights or the opportunity or the interesting thing about the human rights discourse is we all agree on it, that we have human rights, but why we agree on it is up to us. And so if then there is a party or a fraction or like there are theorists who would say there's only one way to justify human rights and this is our religious way, this is somehow incompatible with a pluralist account of human rights thinking. So a state who would grant human rights in form of constitutional rights to their people, also claiming that you have to understand these rights in Christian terms, might make a mistake.
In your writings, you often discuss the idea, which was famously presented by German law scholar Mr. Böckenförde, that not only is freedom of religion an essential constitutional liberty, but religion also plays an important part in human rights law systems, as a certain unifying ethos on which the whole system is based. What are first of all, what are your arguments for this claim, and what do you think are the implications of this notion?
This is a very complicated thing and problem, and I'm struggling with this. You named it Böckenförde idea of that the liberal secularized states lives from what is the English word? Preconditions, yeah, that he can't grant himself. I mean, the idea is if you live in a constitution, in a good functioning democratic constitutional state, if you take a look at your constitution and you read it, it's just a text. It's quite abstract. Some parts sound pathetic, some are more abstract and cold, but yet there is no life in it yet. So this constitution has to be lived by the people and by the individuals. And the question is, what do we need on the side of the individuals who somehow vitalize this constitution? What kind of ethos we need to contribute to a democratic constitutional society? And that the idea then is that they must bring some at least normative convictions or beliefs with them, which the constitution itself can't grant. The state or the constitution can't oblige us to believe certain things, for it would no longer be a liberal state if they would force us to believe in something. So we as individuals have to bring something with us. And this idea of Ernst Wolfgang Böckenförde, this famous German law professor, is that at the end there has to be already something like a common ethos as some kind of a precondition to vitalize a constitution to a democratic society, and religion plays a very important role in this common ethos, he said. because somehow in religion we learn what it means to follow normative binding rules. Yeah?
Mhm.
We learn it at home, yeah? Being educated by our parents, and we somehow learn it in church by reading the religious texts, to how to cope with like rules, morals, yeah? Morality, and the normative binding forces that keep our society together. And this is the idea. And I think if that is true, you know, the relationship between cold law and the warm ethos, yeah, of a democratic society is quite complex, because on the one hand the law system as such is not allowed to favorite a certain religion, yeah, but it is somehow necessary to vitalize these constitutional orders to find religious belief systems in society. So that is a complicated relationship.
Professor, to go back to the implication of this book and for the idea you have just described, do you mean that this, namely that religion is a certain unifying ethos and a foundation for the constitutional law system, means that states should have not only a negative but a positive duty towards religions, that not only should the state not suppress religious liberty, but should also intervene to guarantee that religions flourish in the society, should give them some privileges and protect them in a positive manner. Would you agree with this?
This is in philosophy we discuss this question as the difference between positive and negative duties to fulfill rights. Do we just have the negative duty, which tells us what we are not allowed to do, just to respect religious belief systems, or do we have the positive duty to helping to fulfill and realize, yeah, religious belief systems? And I would say, from a point of view of human rights theory, you can't make the decision between the two alternatives you proposed just by theory. It's somehow up to the democratic process and to the society that has to cope with these problems, whether you, I would say there's a French model and an American model, so to say. The French laicist model would be, we should take religious thinking totally out of the public sphere. It's a totally private thing. You can believe at home, yeah, what you want to believe, but the public sphere has to get rid of religious arguments. Yeah, we have to clean them.
No, by at home you mean also churches or private
Yes.
institutions?
It's like the privatization of religion. I think it has advantages and disadvantages. And the other model, the American model, would be no, religion is not a private, it's not just a private thing. We should allow for religious arguments in the public sphere, and then we have to somehow find fair rules of playing the religious game in public, but it's good to have religious discussions in the public sphere too. So, and I would say whether you want to adopt one or the other model is somehow up to the culture, the society, the democratic process. You find. I don't think that the theory of human rights make a pre-decision which of the two models you should choose.
In your articles, you also claim that traditional religions have to undergo a certain process of transformation to be compatible with human rights law system and to play this role of a unifying ethos in the society. This issue might be especially important in countries like Georgia, where traditional religions, including the dominant Orthodox Church, have a limited experience of operating in a free constitutional law system and in a free public space. So what are the main points of transformation for traditional religions? What steps do they have to take to start this process?
I think there are two main points, and these points are so crucial that I would say, I think when I name them, it's obvious that there's a big conflict. Yeah, I think two main points have to be made at this point. For a religion to be compatible with human rights thinking, first it has to accept the importance of the individual, yeah, against the collective, against collective duties, or against the collective, against the society. I think in traditional political, but also in traditional religious thinking, the society is predominant and the individual is subjected to the society. And I think human rights thinking turns this relation over. The individual is predominant, and the society has to cope with it, you know? And also the religion has to cope with it, that the individual is the predominant factor. This is one main problem, I would say, for traditional religions. And the other is, and this is even worse, so to say, is I think a religion, to be compatible with the human rights thinking, has to accept the predominance of the law system, yeah, over the religious system. And this would be something hard to realize, I guess, if you are a traditionalist religious thinker.
And Professor, in conclusion, to divert from the issue we were discussing, as far as I know, this is your third visit to Georgia, and you have given lectures and seminars not only in Tbilisi but in other regional centers in Kutaisi, in Abastumani, and so on and so on. So, what are your impressions of Georgia, of the public that you've encountered in your public lectures, of the academic and public spheres in Georgia? Could you briefly summarize your impressions on this issue?
Yeah, I'm totally overwhelmed by the hospitality I met here. So this is why I came back the second and the third time, and I really would like to come back too. No, I really like the discussions we had so far, because there were so many very interested students, very good students, and PhD students, and bachelor and master students. So very interested, very respectful discussions. Very much interested, very autonomous thinking I met. So this is what I really liked here, and also discussions with the colleagues here were overwhelmingly friendly and collegial, and so I really had a very nice impression to be here, and I definitely come back if I'm invited again.
This was an interview with Arndt Pollmann, a professor at the Free University of Berlin, on human rights and religion. Thank you.